Hello, I'm calling together this public hearing of the Dog Park Subcommittee. For those of you that don't know, I'd like to introduce the members of the subcommittee. Firstly, myself, my name is John Rich. I'm a 30-year resident of Stratford, more than that. Been involved in the local EMS and everything, and I'm one of the co-chairmen of the Dog Park Subcommittee. Next to me is Bob Jekyll, also a member of Parks and Recreation Committee and the other co-chairman of our subcommittee. And then the other members, starting at the far right, is Rachel Sovera, who is our animal control officer for the town. Next to her is Danielle Stella, who is the president of the Stratford Rescue Society, Animal Rescue Society, or STARS. And then closest to me on the right side is Paula Lockshear, who is the president of the Stratford Dog Park Action Committee. That is the nonprofit group that has been raising the funds for the construction of the dog park. Okay, I just want to go over a few of the rules here. Because we're at about 35 or so speakers, we are going to use the 3-minute rule. The one thing that I'm going to say with that, though, is that I understand the obnoxiousness of this timer and how it tends to drive people crazy. While yes, I'm going to use the timer, when the timer goes off, what that means is that you have an additional 30 seconds to complete your remarks. I don't want anyone to feel that somehow this beeping thing is going to cut you off. Finish your statement, finish your remarks, wrap it up, and then we can move forward. Now, also with that, when you come to the podium, for people who haven't necessarily come to one of these or at any other public forum, please make sure you state clearly your name and address in town for the record. Now, there's 2 other pieces of information that we're looking for, and we're looking for it on a voluntary basis. We ask if you are a dog owner and are willing to share that with us, please do. And if there's an area in town that you tend to like to walk your dog in, and that's the area that you feel you are most comfortable with, please share that with us. It is not required. It doesn't limit your remarks. It's just a little more information. To go along with that, we just want to kind of do a little bit of a straw poll for those that are willing to participate first. Just by a raise of hands, how many people in the room, and again, this does not have any bearing on your ability to speak here tonight, but how many people in the room are against the idea of a dog park altogether in town? Okay, so we got a couple. Second question, though. How many people in the room really have no opinion as to where a dog park should go? You feel the town should have one, and you don't really have any preference as to some of the locations we've looked at, and you don't really have any objections to some of the locations that we've looked at. And again, that's a fairly small number, around 4 people. So what that leaves me with is a crowd of people that all have opinions either for or against a location. And we understand that. And we want to recognize your comments and concerns. But what we want to also realize is the fact that this goal of trying to get a dog park in our town seems to be a town-wide goal for the most part. And we want to work together both with all the parts of government, the committees, the departments, as well as the public, to try and come up with the best of locations that's good for all of the town. So I appreciate you people just helping me out with that straw poll. Now, before I start calling names up, the one other thing I want to mention is that I did receive some emails today from people who emailed me wanting it to be read into the record. I am not planning to read these into the record completely. These letters came to us, and we always have a correspondence section at our regular meeting. Therefore, the body of these letters will be read into the record at our next regular meeting. I am not trying to dissuade anybody's opinion or ignore their opinion. It's just the appropriate time and place for these letters will be at our next meeting when we address correspondence. But just so they're listed, I have an email from a Nancy Russo at 165 Terrell Road, who wrote me to basically tell me that she is against the location at Longbrook Park. However, she feels that a better location might be up near Roosevelt or Booth Park. She lists both of those locations. Secondly, I have a letter here from a Sarah Barnes, and Sarah wrote to say that she is against Longbrook Park, but feels that a location up in Roosevelt would be appropriate. And the last letter that I have is, from a Jean Sutton, who is at 25 Horace Street, who is opposed to Longbrook Park, but did not give me any location where she feels the dog park would go. Again, the body of the letters we will deal with later. Okay? And with that, we will start with the first speaker. Again, you'll hear the timer, but I'm not trying to hold anybody hard to it. And so the first speaker is Mr. Wally Kadim.
Good evening. My name is Wally Kadim. I live 196 Larkin Court, Stratford, Connecticut. First thing I want to say is thank you guys very much for putting in that hard work. There's a whole lot of work you guys did to get where you are tonight, so I just want to say thank you. Not only am I here speaking on my behalf of living at 196 Larkin Court, also I'm the councilman in the 3rd District, and I do a quarterly meeting throughout the year, and we had a meeting prior to you guys having yours, and John Rich came down, and he recognized that Meadowview Park, the people that were there were against that location for various reasons. You know, number one, it's open field, and they have inside the charter of the town, not the charter, but the records of the town, that space is supposed to be kept as an open field or open park in perpetuity, meaning nothing can be on there ever. And also the fact that right next to it is Burns Construction, who constantly up and down that same access road with trucks, all type of trucks, dump load, fork trucks, as well as the fact that that's the main road coming off of Main Street that takes you to Lordship to take you to the highway. So that's a very active road, and I don't really believe that it would be the right place to have other cars trying to park or jockey or fit there and have dogs there at that time, during any time of day. And also the fact that it's been a long process. You know, I'm also the chair of the Park and Rec Department, and we've been dealing with this for so many years, and I'm so glad that John Rich and Mr. Jacob took on the task of putting together that subcommittee you guys served on. And I think what happened also in the past, that forgive me, that we overlooked you as the animal control officer to weigh in. And STARS, I never met anyone there, but I recognize that they work with the town as well. And I stated in the past, and I'll say it again, STARS shouldn't be able to weigh in on that if they're using that space to train the dogs or keep the dogs safe or whatever they do when they're down there working with the dogs at the animal shelter, because that's a conflict of interest, I believe. The location next to the shelter would be the best place for it. This is my opinion, because of the fact that you have assistance for any animal that get in a situation where they get bit or hurt. Any child that's there that get hurt or decide they want to look for another animal for their family, the shelter's there to come see what animals are available. And the fact that it's there is not really in a place where it's affecting anyone's quality of life. No one home is there. The shelter's right next to it, which is a win-win all the way around. I just want to say once again, thank you guys very much for what you do, and God bless all of you. Happy New Year. Thank you.
The next speaker is Michael Sinat.
Good evening. I apologize, my voice is a little bad. I've been sick. My name is Mike Sinnott. I live at 68 Frash Street in Stratford. I've lived there something like 45 years now, and I've seen a lot of things go on in that neighborhood. The thing that amazed me the most, I think, is when the town tried to take that park to make build a new animal shelter. And I saw the residents of this neighborhood pull together and join together. I mean, we're talking people that hated each other's guts, all right? They pulled together as a united force to fight that, and we did. We won. And that's why you don't see animal shelters back in the sewage plant now. We thought of that. And then we saw Burns Construction come along and try to buy that park for a parking lot, and we fought that too. And it looks like we won because Burns ain't got it yet. But the thing is, this land was bought in 1967 with federal money. And part of the deal was if they build anything there, they have to pay the feds back all those millions of dollars that they spent to buy land in this town. And but the bottom line is, this is our park. And if you want to make a dog park there and deprive us the use of our park that we fought for, like I said, I've never seen this neighborhood come together and fight like we did to save that park. And we will fight. I promise you that. We will fight. And I think I agree with Wally Kadeem there. A better place for it is over next to the animal shelter where it doesn't impact anybody. I myself, I would love to take my dog to the animal park, the dog park, and let him run around. As it is now, I got a little dog this big that plays with a pit bull down the street. You should see this tiny little dog playing with this pit bull. I would love to let them run loose, but I can't. If we had the animal park, I could do that. I'm for an animal park, but not in Great Meadows Park. Oh, by the way, the town council saw fit to reaffirm the name. Everyone seems to forgot that it's called Great Meadows Park. And the town council saw fit to rename it again Great Meadows Park and reinforce that perpetuity clause. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Richard Iannucci.
Good evening. My name is Richard Iannucci. I live at 10 Shade Terrace in Stratford. I am a dog owner. I've lived in Stratford for over 35 years and had the pleasure of raising 2 children in this town. As they were growing up, we spent many days enjoying Booth Park as it stands today. The kids enjoyed the swings and just visiting all of the buildings. When they were little, I used to push them in their carriage as they slept in the quiet surroundings at Booth. For the last 8 years, I have been the chairperson that puts on the Booth Memorial Antique and Classic Car Shows, which held on the opening day of the park every year. The show highlights every year at 12 noon when the naval veterans conduct a flag-raising ceremony to honor America, the flag, our military, and our veterans. Booth Park is an educational tool for our students so they may better understand the history of our town and America. I am sure that there is a better location for the dog park than to be at peaceful Booth Park. So I am pleading to the dog park subcommittee to leave Booth Park as it is now and find another location for the park. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Devaney Worcester.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, my name is Devaney Warsdale, and I live at 59 Elk Terrace here in Stratford in the Green. And I have one other letter that someone from Longbrook had written today. I'd like to just submit for your files. They didn't copy you, so I'll just leave it over here for you. Okay?
Yes, and I guarantee at our correspondence section at our next meeting, it
Perfect.
will be read in.
Okay, awesome. I would love to be able to speak off the cuff, but I just can't, so I wrote down some thoughts today. We live on Elk Terrace in the Longbrook neighborhood, and I walk the perimeter of the area several times a day, as I'm fortunate to work from home. I have my finger on the pulse of what exactly is going on at any given time of day at that park during all seasons. I do want to say that I wish I'd been able to attend these meetings sooner. I'm someone who's involved in rescue, and we currently actually are fostering an awesome beagle who's 5 years old, and we rescued him via the Beagle Freedom Project. And he's learning how to be a dog, and he's going to be up for adoption soon, so I thought I would just kind of market him here to the right audience. Anyway, I will be forthright and just say I do oppose a dog park at all in the town, period. I just subscribe to the cons of the idea of it all around, but I'm not going to get into that because obviously we're here vetting sites, and it sounds like we're definitely going to have a park. I do believe Longbrook should have been excluded from the beginning with the proximity to the park, the many children who use the park as a daily path to and from Wilcoxon Elementary School to avoid walking along the busier roads, the sheer proximity, in fact, to the elementary school. It's smack dab in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So from the looks of it, from the aerial views and maps that you guys put forth, no other proposed site seems to have homes, at least as many homes, adjacent to it the way that Longbrook does. Residents on Allendale, Laughlin, Charlton, Prim, East Parkway, all will be immediately affected by this. I know Pop Warner utilizes the space. 275 kids utilize that space to practice 4 months out of the year. The high school also utilizes the space for their various sports practices. Parks and Rec, I understand, uses the area for summer camps as well. To me, the list of reasons as to why Longbrook should have been excluded from the beginning goes on and on. But now add to this the fact that the town has just invested tens of thousands of dollars to make Longbrook Park a four-season park for families with the placement of the new ice rink.
Continue.
It's meant for kids, you know, and there's so many families there. I'd love to talk about the traffic and the congestion that's already existing during games and events and so forth. But I think a lot of that was said in those letters that you received today as well. I understand that Pop Warner and Stratford High School athletics were not personally contacted to be made aware that Longbrook was even a discussion. So I would just suggest that maybe the subcommittee, as a part of their further vetting process, reach out to those folks who lead those organizations and personally have a conversation with them. Thanks so much for hearing me. Bye.
And I apologize for the extended timer. It's the first time I got to use the official timer here. The next speaker is Claudine Cody.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claudine Cody. I live at 111 Colony Street in Stratford. I've been a Stratford resident for 16 years. I am a dog owner. I have two big dogs, and they are my kids. My husband and I do not have children. Our dogs are our kids, truly. There's a lot of parks in town for kids, and I love children, and I pay my taxes, and I do believe many people do think their dogs are just like children, too. I don't compare them. I don't think they're exactly alike, but I think I do deserve a dog park, one dog park for, my use and for other people who want to use it. That being said, the benefits of a dog park, I think, are immeasurable. We have a large yard, but our dogs are bored in their yard. They've been in that yard. All the smells are the same. I've been to dog parks in Shelton and Milford, and quite honestly, it is such a great experience. The dogs rarely, if ever, bark. Owners are constantly responsible for picking up after their dogs, and dogs do get in scuffles just like children do, and there's always that sense of self-responsibility. I believe I've seen that all the time. They're not dirty places, they're not noisy places. I know there's a misconception, but if people would take a trip out to Shelton and see it, it's a gorgeous space for residents to use. I personally like Roosevelt as a space. I think Roosevelt Forest, although it is in the upper part of town, it is accessible from a lot of different areas. And I've been there many times with my dogs before to hike. There's spaces there that aren't used. I understand there are events that happen throughout the year in Roosevelt Forest, but the amount of times dog park attendees go, I don't think it would ever really interfere. It's a beautiful space. There's plenty of room. There's parking already, and it's not very close to a residential or a highly residential area. I'm very much opposed to the site adjacent to the animal control facility. I have many reasons, one being it is a location where they're trying to rehabilitate dogs that are stressed and need to be adopted, and being that close to dogs barking and free could be very stressful to the dogs. I think we've discussed this before. And also, it is a disgusting area. There's mosquitoes, it's a swamp right next to it, not where the animal control facility is, but where the site is for this dog park proposal. It's swampy, and it feels to me like dog owners are being shoved into a dark corner of Stratford. And I don't like that. I don't appreciate that. I think as a dog owner, I've always been responsible with my dogs, and I've witnessed the same in other dog owners. And I do feel that Roosevelt would be a great location. Thank you.
Rob Levine.
Yes, Rob Levine. I live at 46 Pamela Drive in the north end of Stratford with my wife. We've been there for over 35 years. We've walked in Roosevelt Forest for years. I'm not pro, I'm not con. I'm familiar with the forest through years of Cub Scouts with my son, Boy Scouts, hiking the trails, constantly meeting other people with their dogs. It's a very friendly area. The ranger station has been in disuse for numerous years. Seems like an ideal spot just to fence in and use for a dog park with easy access and without being able to disturb any people, because there are no people that live close by the ranger station. There is wildlife there, but these dogs would be contained within a fence. When I walk our dogs now, they are leashed, and most people I do meet also have their dogs on leashes up there. But basically, I think any place in town, I think the town needs a dog park. There are thousands of dog owners here in Stratford, and we've seen them over many years. We've been a dog owner ourselves for very many years. Unfortunately, our son passed away last March, and we did have 2 of his dogs, and now one of them had to be put down, so now we have 1 dog left. And my wife and I have been in contact with members of this committee, the town council, and the mayor's office since last spring when my son passed away, offering to help fund this park. So to me, the financial needs of this park should be irrelevant for any decision you have to make, because we would just like to have this in the memory of our son, who was a volunteer EMS here in Stratford. He was an EMT. He was a volunteer firefighter in Trumbull. He belonged to Trumbull Animal Group. He was a dog lover extraordinaire. So to me, I know there's always people that are going to have objections, no matter what spot you pick. Someone may say Roosevelt Forest is going to disturb the wildlife. Longbrook Park, you have houses around there. But meanwhile, the town, in a matter of months, can fund an ice rink that might be used for possibly 10 or 15 days a year with the winter we've been having, and yet the thousands of dog owners have no place to go with their dogs to run free. You have to keep them leashed. You have to walk them on sidewalks. They can't enjoy nature the way they were born to do. So my opinion is, you folks have been working hard on this. You should pick a spot. I think Roosevelt Forest would be the most innocuous and the least offensive to most people. But let's just get this done, and let's give the dogs and the dog owners someplace to enjoy life and have a better quality of life than they currently do here in Stratford. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Levine, on behalf of the committee, we understand and we are sorry for your loss. I remember your son. I worked with him at EMS for many years, and I understand and appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Rick Milton.
Richard Minton, 5725 Main Street, across from Booth Park. Good evening, co-chairman and ladies of the subcommittee. My remarks are going to be brief. Number one, I am very much against the dog park being built in Booth Park. The reasons first lie legally. The Booth brothers will left the park to this town in perpetuity. It is my long understanding that the rules of testator intent have been tested in courts all across this land, and in particular in Connecticut, and there was never a provision for a dog park. The park was to be left as is. There was a brief period when the train station was put in, and there was objection to it by some of the neighbors because it was a change in the park, and it was a change that was not recognized at that point by the Connecticut Historical Commission. And I would submit to you tonight that there is an ongoing issue with the park being on the National Historic Register, and that if the town decides to put a dog park there, they would have to go to the Connecticut Historic Commission and notify. Part of that is a notification to all the abutting property owners, which will give them standing to oppose it. So for those reasons, I would submit that Booth Park is, that should be dispositive of this issue. Finally, I have a letter from Carol Sinetti, which I will submit to the chairman. He can read it into the correspondence. Mrs. Sinetti couldn't be here tonight. She lives at 5395 Main, and she is the president of the Putney Chapel Association, and the gist of her letter is simply that putting a dog park behind the chapel would make the chapel less usable for people renting it, especially for weddings and whatnot in the warm weather, and it would be to the detriment of the Chapel Association. And finally, I don't know if it's been brought up, and I hear the buzzer going off. Has anybody computed how much dog poop is going to be generated by a place like this, and how are we going to get rid of it, and what are the provisions for that? And I thank you for your time and the attention, and how do I just leave it here? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next speaker is Ann Minton.
Good evening. Ann Minton, 5725 Main Street. I've lived in Stratford for 37 years. I grew up here. As a kid, we went sledding, prom photos, you know, the works, picnics, etc. One picnic that we had when I started living right across the street was a neighborhood picnic. It involved dozens and dozens of families in the area. And that picnic took place directly in the bottom part of the park where you are proposing the dog runs to be. I know we're not the only people that had large picnics and family reunions there, but that is one of the major spaces for those types of larger events. So I would like to just submit that those are really inconvenient places to have a dog park. I have a letter from Bessie Burton, who is on 165 Chapel Street. She and her husband Ken have, of course, been very involved in the park for years. They are in Florida this week and could not be here. I'd like to read at least a little bit of this if I could. Is that all right?
Within the time allowed that you have, if you'd like to read some in, sure.
Okay. I will leave out, well, let's see. Bessie has been on the Director of Volunteers for the Board for the Booth Park and Museum and on the Booth Park Commission and the trustee of the Friends of Booth Park. She began working there in 1982. She was the first chairperson of the Booth Park Commission. She's very familiar with the site and with how the Booth brothers wish their property to be used. When she was looking at the history of the family and was writing down here that it was clear that the Booths had opened up their first museum in 1913 to offer unusual collections and buildings for the public. And it began to be a creative project, resulting in a most unique site that is recognized as having the most unusual architecture in New England. There are more visitors to this place than any other in town, drawing thousands of visitors from out of state and out of the country every year. It offers special events that also draw people here, and based on its quiet space, exceptional gardens, and the peace that it offers. All of those things are free, as the Booth brothers desired in their last will and testament. There are tours, school programs, museum activities. They're all available to everyone in town and to surrounding towns. This is not a place for a dog park. Because the Park and Museum is on the National Register of Historic Places, the town has a responsibility to honor and comply with certain regulations that will assure that the park is preserved as is. Right now, the town and the Friends of Booth are restoring a dilapidated Booth barn, despite the fact that it would have been easier and cheaper just to tear the building down. But the right thing to do is to keep the park as is and to care for and restore what is presently there. In summary, Bessie is asking to please find another place that is not in conflict with the people-oriented parks or spaces. And I want to just submit another letter that was handed to me. I think it also went to the mayor of the town and some other folks, but I'm not sure who got it, so I will leave that here as well. And I want to say personally that I am not opposed at all to a dog park. I think it's a great idea. I just think that at Booth Park, it's just not a very big space. So we wish you well in finding another spot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next speaker is David Capozzi.
Hello, good evening. My name is Dave Capozza, 34 Elk Terrace. I do have a dog, and I am in support of a dog park overall. I think that we as a town need one. I think it benefits not only the dogs, but obviously us, the dog owners, as well. So I think it's a win for the team, or the town. While I'm not as familiar with the other sites, I do live in the Longbrook area, and so I do support having the dog park in the Longbrook area for a couple of reasons. For one, if you look at the park itself, as this was actually recently discussed at the Park Commission, the park is actually very diverse and dynamic. There's a lot of different things going on at the park to bring residents in, everything from the athletic field to the playground, the splash park, the Vicky Soto Memorial, the pond over the way, tennis courts, and now an ice rink. So I think it actually fits pretty well to have a dog park at Longbrook Park. I think it fits well with in terms of what the park offers to the local residents. And as we've been hearing from other folks, some of the other sites don't have that type of dynamic attribute to them, so I think Longbrook would be well served. I think a lot of people, I know a lot of people already use Longbrook Park to walk their dogs. It's a very residential area. If you go down on the weekends, you're going to see us, the neighbors, the local residents get down there. We bring our dogs down there and play with them, so on and so forth. So I think what that shows is that there's a need and that it would be used quite a bit if it was in the Longbrook area. And just to quickly address, we've heard a couple of questions and concerns around safety, so on and so forth. The subcommittee did make a presentation relative to what would go into creating the park itself, between the fence, the fob tokens to allow residents in, as well as having looked at other towns that have dog parks. And actually, it is fairly common for a dog park to be in the proximity of other park-like amenities like children's playground, so on and so forth. And the park would be looking over and taking care of dog waste and so on and so forth. So I think that there's been a lot of thought put into it, and I thank the commission for doing that. I do think it would be a safe park to have, and I think Longbrook Park would be the best place to have it in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Hernandez. Lisa Hernandez.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Hernandez, 175 Cut Spring Road. I've come to the forum tonight to speak in favor of a dog park in Stratford. I first spoke to council against putting the park adjacent to the WPCA back in July. That location has always been a bad choice, and I am pleased that council rejected it then and that it is not a consideration now. Since that time, over the last 6 months, I have attended multiple meetings of the Dog Park Subcommittee and the individual park committee meetings to educate myself on what a dog park could look like for our community. I have witnessed the tireless work that Paula Lockshear of the Stratford Dog Park Group and the Dog Park Subcommittee members have done these many months to provide the information needed so the citizens and the town officials could make an informed choice for the best location. After reviewing the multiple presentations showing that an aesthetically pleasing park is an unwavering given, and hearing the myriad of facts presented, as the council will see for themselves in the report, which will dispel many myths and misconceptions of dog parks that some continue to perpetuate, it is my honest opinion that a dog park would be an asset to Stratford and make Stratford an attractive destination for potential new residents, as well as providing current residents with the dog park experience that residents of all our neighboring towns already enjoy, all at minimal or no cost to the town. After reviewing the subcommittee's choices, my opinions are as follows. Booth Park, Roosevelt Forest, and Short Beach are all acceptable locations. Great Meadows Park would not be my choice due to the close proximity to busy traffic, lack of parking, and designation as preferred open space. I consider Site A in Longbrook Park to be the best choice for a dog park. Longbrook Park is a public park for all residents of Stratford. The central location will allow many people to walk to the dog park, minimizing additional traffic in the area. It is already used as an informal dog park by residents, many who allow their dogs to run off leash, which is actually in violation of town laws. Leash laws have a place in society, but there's no denying dogs enjoy the freedom of running off leash. The dog park enables us to have the best of both worlds. The citizenry is protected, and everyone gets to enjoy off-leash running in a confined, managed space. The recent success of the ice rink further demonstrates that there is room for multiple recreation opportunities in Longbrook Park. Longbrook is a social gathering place. Guess what? So is a dog park. It is a place where people and their dogs can congregate and share a sense of community. My fervent hope is that the Town Council diligently reviews the Dog Park Subcommittee's detailed, well-researched report and votes in favor of a dog park for Stratford at the next council meeting. Thank you for your time.
Alice Arcuri.
Hi, good evening. I'm Alice Arcuri. I'm at 65 Bittersweet Lane in Stratford. I am not a current dog owner, but I do have 2 dogs in my family, my extended family, that I'm very near and dear to. I do want to thank this committee for all the hard work. I know this has been years in the making. I know Paul has worked tirelessly for years and years and years. I'd love to see this come to fruition. My personal opinion is that I would love to see the dog park in Longbrook, in the Longbrook Park area. Yes, there are a lot of homes, but I think as a community, we have to think about the word community. We have to get away from the not in my backyard mentality. I think that there are many families that utilize Longbrook in so many different ways, and I don't know why dog owners should be excluded. I agree with much of what's been spoken about families with fur babies and not real children. They're paying taxes too. They should be able to use the town facilities as well. I'm all for that. I think dog parks are safe. I think you guys too. I don't want to preach to the choir. I would definitely not choose the area next to the shelter based on what we heard in July, that kind of activity would be disruptive to the animals already in the shelter. And it is pushing aside the dog park to an out-of-way area, and the mosquitoes and just a myriad of reasons. And if I'm not mistaken, the ACO even didn't want the dog park down there. So in closing, I just want to say that I'm glad we're moving forward with this. Thank you for your work. Please let's use Longbrook as our designated area. Thank you.
Mike Palmieri.
Good evening, Mike Palmieri, 35 Oak Ridge Road. I've been a board member and coach for Stratford Pop Warner for the past 28 years. We use Longbrook Park basically from mid-July through November. We have approximately 90 kids plus parents plus siblings there every evening. Longbrook Park would be an absolute horrible place to put the dog park. Running kids that are yelling and running all over the place to a dog would either look they want to play with them, or they're going to look like prey to them. And as Ms. Fernandez has already said, it's already being used as an informal dog park, and we've had instances where unleashed dogs have chased our kids as they were doing laps around the park. Having a dog park there is just going to add to that. I would like to suggest, because I haven't heard it brought up yet, the town has a large empty lot in the back of Worcester Park on the corner of Quayle Street. That's a flat meadow, and to me it would be an outstanding place for it, since across the street from it is also an empty lot. And I don't think there would be an issue in being included into a park area, especially one as well-traveled and as Longbrook Park is. There's an awful lot of people there. We have Stratford football games. They have their practice there. It is probably the most utilized place in all of Stratford. Having a dog park there is going to create a problem. That's basically all I got to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speakers listed is Gwen and Parker Ackley. Do you both want to speak together or separately?
My name is Gwen Ackley, 111 Peppered Circle, and I am a descendant of the Booth family through my great-grandmother, Anne Elizabeth Booth Cook. My husband, Parker Ackley, and I are also members of the Friends of Booth Memorial Park and Museum. We volunteer our time each year to help publicize the opening day of the park and museum buildings. We also participate in the annual car show on that same day with our own historic vehicle, an original 1915 Dodge Brothers touring car. This car show has helped raise public awareness of the great legacy to the town of Stratford left by my cousins, the Booth brothers, Stephen and David Booth. We've been very pleased to see the public attendance to the park and museum increase, along with the membership to the Friends of Booth Memorial Park and Museum as a result of more activities that promote history on opening day. It has come to our attention about the proposal to construct a dog park or dog run at the Booth Park. However, this proposal is in direct violation to the last will and testament of the Booth brothers, who left the park for people to enjoy in its present pastoral state. In addition, Booth Memorial Park and Museum was listed on the National Register of Historic Places on May 1st, 1985. This is the United States federal government's official list of districts, sites, buildings, structures, and objects, quote, deemed worthy of preservation, unquote. If one special interest group is allowed to violate the Booth will and the National Register of Historic Places, it sets precedent for other special interest groups to take over more acreage. People have enjoyed pleasant times at the park for a quiet picnic, family reunion, wedding or prom photos, or simply a peaceful walk across the grounds. The Rose Garden especially has been used for many weddings and photos. Its tranquil setting is accompanied by the sounds of a beautiful water fountain and bird song, which provides a much-loved step-back-in-time, serene atmosphere. The family cemetery provides comfort in its calm setting. With the barking from a dog park on the grounds, couples planning their wedding and other civic groups will go elsewhere, which would result in a loss of revenue to the town of Stratford from renting the buildings. Many people visiting the park are avid bird watchers. Because of the park's location next to the Housatonic River, its grounds are a migratory rest stop as well as a home to a large variety of birds. The park attracts a number of different species due to the large open spaces, many trees, and the nearby river. The September 2010 Birdwatching Festival held by the Connecticut Audubon Society found 262 birds of 49 species, including the bald eagle, double-crested cormorant, downy woodpecker, great blue heron, monk parakeet, and red-tailed hawk. On the internet, birders are constantly posting the bird sightings that they experience at Booth Park. In the fall, hundreds of hawks are sighted. In the spring, the wood warblers, getting rarer due to a loss of habitat, migrate from the rainforest in South America. Rare birds will not land where a canine threat is present. The Booth brothers built an aviary for birds on the property, so it's obvious where they stood regarding birds. School groups have utilized the historic buildings and artifacts for education purposes. Booth Memorial Museum maintains a collection of 20 architectural unique buildings. Putting a dog park on the grounds could inadvertently have an adverse impact obtaining educational grants for their friends to continue school programs. The historic nature and museum quality of Booth Memorial Park and Museum will be negatively affected to have its lands turned into something that was not at all intentioned by the Booth family. While some dog owners may be respectful with well-trained animals, often that is not the case. One needs to question if a dog park belongs on historic property with museum buildings. I do not think so, my ancestors would not have thought so, and the National Register of Historic Places definitely would not think so. Please locate the dog park elsewhere in Stratford. Please leave Booth Memorial Park and Museum as a proper legacy of the Booth family.
Thank you. Virginia Harris.
Co-Chairman Richin and Jekyll, and members of the subcommittee, good evening. I'm Virginia Harris of 1360 Main Street, Stratford, and I'm president of the Friends of Booth Park.
Ms. Harris, can you hold 1 second while we change the tape?
Surely.
Thank you. You can continue, no loss of time.
Thank you. And I'm here representing both the Friends of Booth Park and myself as a private citizen and a longtime Stratford resident. The Friends of Booth Park is an all-volunteer, nonprofit organization formed in 1984 to preserve and restore Booth Memorial Park and Museum. The organization raises funds, coordinates volunteer efforts, stimulates interest, and encourages support for the perpetuation of the museum as an historic asset of the town of Stratford and state of Connecticut. The Friends of Booth volunteers maintain museum collections, mount exhibits, provide tours of the museum buildings, and present special events such as the May opening day and the recent Civil War reenactment on the park grounds. One of the key programs offered by the Friends are the academic year educational programs for local school children, which present life on a 19th century farm and serve 1,500 school children each year. The park's fascinating and exceptional collection of buildings and artifacts give the park and the museum added importance as a tourist destination and provide immense potential for historic education and interpretation. There are approximately 8,000 people who visit the museums alone each year. The entire site, as we've been hearing, including the land and all of its original buildings, is listed on the National Register of Historic Places by the U.S. Department of Interior. Booth Memorial Park and Museum is the only park in Stratford to hold this important designation. This special status must be respected. The museum aspect of Booth Memorial Park and Museum is not just the buildings, the displays, the 19th century artifacts and implements. It is also the land and the space itself, the whole of all of these things. Before it became a park in 1955, this land was used and occupied by the Booth family as a home and residence continuously since 1663. In their wills, David and Stephen Booth revealed their intent to leave their land and buildings to the town of Stratford for use as a public park. They spoke of the pleasure that it gave them, and I'm quoting from their will, to discuss its possibilities as a public park where people could come and enjoy themselves as we ourselves have enjoyed living on it during our lifetime. We have enjoyed picturing in our minds the manner in which it could be laid out and beautified so that it would be an attractive and restful place to which people could come and enjoy its extensive views, scenic beauty, and pleasures, end of quote. The will of the Booth brothers in making this generous and special gift to the people of Stratford must be respected. The Friends of Booth works cooperatively with the Mayor's Office and the Booth Memorial Park Commission to maintain the park buildings and grounds in keeping with the intent of the Booth brothers and to offer appropriate programming in the park for the enjoyment of the people of Stratford, all free of charge, as we've learned earlier. Along with the Commission, the Friends seek to present activities in the park which make use of the parkland but leave it intact. Examples of such events are the Friends Opening Day event, the 2016 Civil War reenactment event, and the Commission's annual Pumpkin Day Festival.
For us,
Yes,
please?
yes. All of these activities make full use of the park and leave it unscathed. At the present time, something I would like to make the committee aware of, the Friends are collaborating with both the town of Stratford and the state of Connecticut to renovate and repurpose the 19th century English barn, which overlooks the scenic views of the East Meadow toward the Housatonic and River beyond. This building is being repurposed into a visitors and education center.
I'm sorry, but we do need to continue. I noticed that your comments are on paper.
Yes.
Could you pass them up and we will put them into the record?
Yes, I'd be pleased if you would read the whole of the comments into the record, and I will leave a copy right here.
Thank you. Paul Reslick.
Chairman Rich and co-chairman Jake, members of the dog park, subcommittee of the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Name and address, sir.
Paul Wrestling, 1360 Main Street, Stratford.
Thank you.
I'm here representing the Friends of Booth and the trustees. I'm also here as a citizen to give my opinion. It may or may not be relevant, but I'm an architect. Yesterday, I went to the park to walk around the site where the dog parks are proposed and to walk around the restoration site of the building that they were talking about, the English barn that's going to become our future visitor center and educational building. Site B sits directly in the middle of the great lawn of the park, directly east of the clock tower, the blacksmith shop, and the visitor center. It sits directly northeast of the Rose Garden. It sits directly north of the Merritt Parkway toll booth structure and directly west of some of the park's picnic areas. It will be both visible and audible from every one of those locations. Both sites B and C will be visible and audible from our new visitor center, and rainwater runoff from either one of them will end up in the open water pond next to the end of Putney Chapel Way. Both sites will seriously and adversely affect the park's character and the great many of the park's existing programs and major events. A few facts. A square 1-acre dog park, as Site C seems to be, is 2/3 of the length of a professional football field on all 4 sides. That adds up to about 836 linear feet of chain link fence in what is now the open park with grass and many mature trees. At a spacing of 5 feet, that adds up to about 170 post holes drilled into the park grounds and presumably anchored with concrete. It's an unnecessary and intrusive process for a very beautiful and useful park. I'm a former multiple dog owner and a sincere dog lover, but I believe that the Booth Park is clearly one of the worst places to put a dog park. I'm also bearing a letter from one of the neighbors of the park, and they have problems with fire trucks getting down to their locations. It would be exacerbated if people were parking down there for access. I'd like to have this submitted. Thank you. And I'd like to have my own remarks submitted for the record.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
George Adams.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is George Adams. I'm a trustee of the Friends of Booth Park for the past 25 or so years. And since 1984, I bought the property directly across the street from Putney Chapel, which is 5895 Main Street in Putney. I concur wholeheartedly with what the Ackleys had to say about the Booth brothers' intentions. And I think this land has to be distinguished from any other land the town owns, in that the town got this as a gift, subject to restrictions. And it would be, my way of thinking, spitting on the graves of the Booths to not comply with their intentions. This is not a property that will be free to be a school, even though as a school it's a good use, or any other kind of public use that might be beneficial to the town. But this one has to be respected as being done in compliance with the Booth brothers' intentions and with the historic designations that have been obtained. And since 1984, when I purchased the property, I've witnessed countless weddings, and I would hate to have seen those interrupted by barking dogs. We've also had many thousands and thousands and thousands of students go through the museum functions. They're a group of dedicated volunteers. And as Mr. Wrestling said, the vistas from all of these beautiful historic buildings, unique buildings, that the Booths left to the town would be impacted by the proposed dog park. So I'm not a dog owner. I do like dogs. I think that's a good idea for the town to have a dog park. But that for legal reasons and ethical reasons, this would be a totally improper place to put it. Thank you.
Joseph Pedito. Pedoto. Sorry, sir.
Hi, my name is Joe Pedoto. I'm at 478 Prospect Drive in Stratford. I've been a resident of Stratford for about 8 minutes, actually 15 years. I have to compliment the entire committee, but I would be very, very remiss if I didn't point out that the actual groundwork, the photography, the measurements, the site visits have all been done by Paula Lockshear. The PowerPoint presentations, the PDFs, everything that this committee has put together, 99% of that work has been done by Paula Lockshear. She has been tireless in her efforts both to raise funds and to provide information. And I think Paula Lockshear should be acknowledged. I'm half Sicilian, half Labrador Retriever. I'm obviously in favor of a dog park. I don't have a strong opinion on any particular location in town. Obviously, it seems like Booth Park is what the people want, right? But I do want to make one point very quickly. The ordinance that was passed by the town council several years ago stated that the animal control officer, in this case Rachel Silvera, should have input as to the location. Rachel Silvera has publicly stated she does not think that it would be appropriate to have it near the sewage treatment plant or near what we finally have after 60 years of a dismal animal control facility, a state-of-the-art animal control facility. She has stated her opposition. It's in the ordinance that she should have input on it. STARS has also stated their opposition. A few years ago, when there was a public meeting here, this entire section of the audience was filled with STARS representatives with their T-shirts on saying not near the ACO facility. And I'd like to make one other, so I'm opposed to that location. There was an insane idea that the dog park should be placed within the sewage treatment plant. The person who suggested that needs to see a doctor. That's crazy. And I would just like to make one further point. Perhaps it's preaching to the choir here, but a dog park in Stratford benefits everyone in Stratford, not just dog owners. The more that dogs are socialized with other dogs and other people, the better behaved those dogs are. Every town surrounding this community has a dog park. Stratford can do this. It's not rocket science. It's a fence in a field. Come on.
Mr. and Mrs. Is it Gadlick?
No,
Gadicki.
I have lived in the town of Stratford for 68 years, on and off. I knew your brother. I knew where you used to live in Orono, but I don't look familiar to you as you look to me. I have a husky. She's a wonderful dog, but she's others dogs who play with it. I live in the north end of Stratford. I don't want to bring my
Mr.
dog.
Gadicki, please.
I do not want to bring my dog.
One other thing, sir. I do need, for the record, your address first. I know, it's a formality.
Pleasant View Avenue, Stratford, Connecticut, 06614.
Thank you, sir.
I wouldn't want it in Roosevelt Forest. Why? Please, ticks. I don't want to bring my dog to the vet and pay $300 for them to get shots to not have fleas. I would like to see the dog park in Longbrook Park, up by Worcester Junior High School. Those are ideal places. Dog park is fenced in. They don't run around all over crazy. They're fenced in. Going to the gentleman that was a coach for a baseball team, my dogs are protected, or my dog would be protected against your kids, because they would be in a sealed, confined area. I would really like to see it in Longbrook Park, because I walk my dog there now. I walk from East Main Street to Stratford Center. The dog likes to walk, likes to sniff, likes to, well, what dogs like to do. Likes other dogs and loves people. Loves people. But what can I say? Longbrook Park, please. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Amy Sprogus? No, I got one right.
Hello, I'm Amy Sprogus. I live at 478 Prospect Drive in Stratford. I've been a resident for about 13 years. 15. Thank you, dear. 15 years. I've been to many dog parks. I think they're a great thing. We have a few dogs. I deal with many dogs because I walk neighbors' dogs. To be briefer, I'm against the sewage treatment location. There's mosquito-borne diseases, and you've heard what other people have had to say. I agree with all that. I also believe we should be respecting the experts, which are in this room, Rachel Savera and Danielle Steele. They're, of anybody in this room, they're the most expert of anybody dealing with dogs, and I think we should respect what they have to say about the sewage treatment plant. I think any of the, there was a few other locations that seemed good. Longbrook, near Worcester. Somebody mentioned the ranger station at Roosevelt. And the last location I think would be a possibility that I think has been sort of dismissed is Short Beach, near the old mini golf. Now, I think it was dismissed just out of hand because there was a rumor of like damaged ground and so forth. And then all of a sudden, somebody who has a carousel put forth a plan that, oh, I'd like to put a carousel there, and all of a sudden that land is fine now. And I think it should be brought up again. There's parking all over the place there. It wouldn't disturb anybody's neighbors. It's already used for many, all the beach, the tennis, a lot of things like Longbrook. It has a lot to offer. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Karen Douglas.
Good evening. I'm Karen Douglas. I live on 96A Seminole Lane in Stratford. I'm a resident for 43 years. I am on the committee of the Friends of Booth for almost 30 years, and I'm also a dog owner. And as a dog owner, since we don't have a dog park in Stratford, I have been using the dog park in Milford. Now, I have to tell you, it's fortunately located in a remote area. It doesn't interfere with any residential area. It's wonderful for the dogs. However, they leave their calling cards, and there are a lot of residents that don't pick up after them. When it rains, there is a mess, and you can smell it in the summer. And there was a lot said about Booth Park, so I don't want to repeat it. But I think that a dog park like that, especially when there are problems, really would not be nice to have a Booth Park. It could cause an eyesore. I think Roosevelt Park or another place where our furry friends can enjoy themselves would be much, much better. Please consider this. Thank you.
Mary Butterwick? Good enough for government work? Yeah, this is government work.
Good evening. I'm Mary Budrowich. I live at 63 Meadowview Avenue in Stratford. I am not a dog owner, so I'm here really speaking in favor of trying to protect our tiny neighborhood in the South End I feel that we have taken a lot of abuse in terms of the amount of commercial development that has happened and is happening in our area. And as you well know, that Great Meadows Park is protected by an ordinance that says that it should remain open land in perpetuity. There's a good reason for that. We are crushed by commercial development, and I really don't think there's room for more. You've already heard, of course, the traffic that goes by. There are trucks. I consider it an unsafe area for this use. And in fact, the parking, I don't imagine where you think people are going to park when they come to use that space. They will be forced to use on-street parking. And what are we expected to do in terms of traversing our own neighborhood roads while people are trying to be there with their dogs? Also, effectively, the parking would be in the front yards of the people who live in that neighborhood. I would just like you to please note that no one has spoken in favor of using Great Meadows Park, and I think there's a really good reason for that. Thank you.
Stephanie.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Phillips, 41 Yarwood Street. And I first want to thank each and every one of you for the time that you have invested, all the work you have done. Paula, you really have gone out extensively to do a lot of work. Rachel, all of you have come to all the meetings. And as someone who has sat in those chairs, I know how much work it takes without often getting a lot of appreciation. I'm also very pleased that we're moved this far because as someone who really wanted to see the dog park get off the ground with whatever influence I have, I'm very happy that John Rich and Bob Jekyll have taken it to the point that we're actually going to be close to finding a location. There are a couple of locations, you've got some good locations, but there are a couple of locations I do want to speak to that I do not think are the best locations. One of them is the Great Meadow Marsh. It is a very small plot of land. I don't think it's high on your list. I don't want to overreact, but it is the only open space in that entire district. Replacing it with a dog park would actually effectively eliminate that open space for public use. The parking, as what you've just heard, is a problem. One of the thoughts was that you could take part of the park, pave it, and make it for parking. That's not really acceptable either. So my answer is that you're not considered that highly on your list. The second location I'm going to put my hat on as the Booth Park Commission chairperson. You've heard a number of the people here who live right across from the park, and you've heard from the Friends of Booth, and I've submitted letters on behalf of the Friends of Booth as well. The Booth Park Commission is unified in rejecting the locations, both locations at Booth Park, for the many, many reasons that were mentioned, the will, the pastoral culture of the park, and something else that's not really mentioned as much is that there are no fences in that park. This would be the only fenced area in the entire park, which would destroy the real beauty and landscape of the property. With that, next week, because our meeting just happened to fall after the public hearing, we will be voting on the locations. I'm sure you know we will be sending you a vote of rejection, or at least that we have denied that we would like to have the park there. So we will formalize it as has done the other parks. Aside from that, there are some other locations. I understand that there are people who are interested in Longbrook Park. I think that is a possibility. I certainly would want to lend whatever help I could to it. I would caution you that you would probably need to look at improving the parking arrangements and some of the other amenities so that it would be collaborative with all the other many functions that go on in the park. Roosevelt Forest is also expressed, I understand, some interest. I'm not advocating for one or the other, but I also wouldn't mind. If you do consider Roosevelt Forest, I understand that the ranger station is something, the location that they have chosen, and in their minds, one of the benefits is that we should take down the ranger station, and we should include that cost if we do move forward on that. Both those ideas, as long as the neighborhood is accepted to that, I would certainly be excited to see a dog park in the town, because I think a dog park represents part of the community wholeness. And that is something that many other communities have had, and I think will enrich the town as well. That's my thoughts. Thank you very much for all the work that you have done.
That's all the list I have on there. I want to give one more opportunity, since we are doing well with time. Is there any other person that would like to come up and speak? Please come up. I'm going to be passing the sheet down, but you're going to have to self-announce.
Mr. Chairman, just one thing. Ann Minton read from this letter and did not deposit a copy of it.
Thank you, sir. And there was one other person? Two others? Very good.
Do you want me to?
Just name and address and we'll get it
All
from
right,
here.
Jennifer Benai, 173 Woodcrest Avenue.
A little slower, though. I don't write that fast.
173 Woodcrest Avenue. My husband and I moved to Connecticut almost 20 years ago. We chose Stratford for many reasons, but a huge factor was our two kids, Henry and Zoe. We hoped to find a house specifically in the Longbrook Park area. Since it's a perfect place to exercise our dogs, you naturally go there anyway. We weren't able to find a house exactly in that location, but still close enough, and we took our dogs down there frequently and have many happy memories of our dogs at Longbrook Park. Longbrook Park is centrally located and can be enjoyed and accessed by so many people around town because it is in the middle of town. And another reason why we chose Stratford is because of the beach. I've come to really appreciate the wildlife that we have at the beach and the migratory species in particular. And I would really hope that that would be a huge consideration in denying any dog park locations by the beach, even with the potential risk of any of the migratory species being impacted in any manner. I do understand that the conservation administrator has weighed in on Short Beach. I believe, I did reach out to her, so I think that she has. I just don't think that it's worth the risk. No to Short Beach, yes to Longbrook, and I would be happy to volunteer to help keep that area clean for those residents that are concerned about it. I think it's a great location, and I certainly respect any residents who don't want that to be the location, but we do need a dog park. This is really important to our community. And again, I'm happy to pitch in as needed. Thank you.
Councilman Chase, or, all right, we'll let this gentleman go first.
Good evening. Paul Taveras, 1372 South Ave, lifelong resident, 57 years. Retired fireman. I'm also on the Board of Zoning Appeals here. Formal dog owner. I had a great dog, sheepdog. Name was Chewy. This was before Star Wars. 13 years, he was a great dog. I'm in favor of a dog park. At first I thought that the location right by the shelter would be ideal, but I have friends that live in that area, so even though I'm on South Avenue, if there was a dog park, I'd want it to be close so I would be able to walk in, but I will say that more people need to speak. Hopefully there'll be another forum where people directly affected in these areas will speak, but I definitely am in favor of a dog park. And as far as mosquitoes are concerned, listen, we're a shoreline town. There's mosquitoes. South End, there's mosquitoes at Longbrook. There's mosquitoes at Booth. So, wear repellent. That's what we Stratfordites do. We wear repellent with DEET, and it's effective. So, but I definitely would like a dog park, and if it's by majority rule where it's located, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, co-chairman, members of the committee, my name is Vincent Chase. I've been a resident of Stratford for 67 years, and I'm an owner of 2 labs, Shelby and Elliot, who would very much like to have a dog park in town. Obviously, I'm in support of a dog park. I only have a couple of comments. First of all, you should know, for the record, I am also a member of the Booth Park Commission and would oppose that area. One item regarding the Booth Park area, which was sort of mentioned briefly, I have heard from residents who live on Putney Way and the surrounding street. They are very concerned. They have had problems in the past with fire trucks getting down that lane. Parking there in that area would be difficult for any emergency vehicle needing to get to a location in that area. In terms of where I would like to see it, whatever the committee decides, subcommittee decides, I really believe this should be centrally located, not in the north end, not in the south end, but somewhere central to the town for that purpose. And so, again, I want to thank you. I would also like to make one recommendation to the subcommittee. I know that you'll be filing a report to the town council, and I would ask that the committee, although you're going to be making 5 recommendations, that you specifically tell us where you think the park should go. That would be very helpful in terms of my decision-making, and I want to thank you again for your time and effort in this project. Thank you.
Yes, sir?
Hi, my name is Paul Butler. I'm the Stratford Pop Warner president. Been living here for 48 years in the town. Am a dog owner. And I'd like to say that I got a couple of questions about parking.
Your address, sir?
292 Roosevelt Avenue, 280 Roosevelt. It's kind of hard during the months of June and November. Parking's like real bad down there. And I have a question: if a dog got out and bit one of my kids, whose liability is that going to be on? Thank you.
Are you set, sir? I mean, the way you walk, I just want to make sure you get your piece in. Okay, thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Kane Bosma. I am 379 Glenridge Road, Stratford, Connecticut, 14-year residence. I am a dog owner, a boxer named of Lucy, big part of my family. Live right off Longbrook. First off, I just want to say I've been familiar with you guys as I've been a part of the ice rink and I've been a part of the committee, and I do really think a dog park is something that would be great for this town and is much needed. But I am going to voice my concern for the Longbrook location, just as I feel as a parent with children, the amount of volume of people in that area that I see daily, I just don't think it would be the best use of the land. I think Roosevelt Forest would be a nice alternative for it, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of things that are challenging as the schools use that area for sports. Pop Warner's there. There's a lot of activity that goes on daily. I think that would really cause some challenges. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Just remember, please name and address.
Yep. My name is Wendy Scott. I live at 21 Bridgeview Place, and I'm new to Stratford. We moved up here over the summer, my family and I was a little disappointed when there was no dog park. I came from Norwalk, so we had Rowayton Dog Park, and I don't know if anyone's ever been there, but it is right in the middle of a residential area. There is a ballpark, there is a community center, there are kids, there are people, there are dogs, and everybody comes and brings their dog. Not everybody, but there's a nice group. You get to see people, it's social. My dogs had the best time. It's a little far to bring them from Stratford because I have big dogs. And I know that the gentleman from Pop Warner raised some issues about having issues with their dogs while kids are at practice. Well, there was a dog park there, it'd be fenced in. The dogs wouldn't be loose. They wouldn't be chasing their children. And maybe, parents who are there with their dogs would go into there. Or, I just think it'd be safer for everybody. I think a dog park's a great idea. It definitely socializes the dogs. I know my dogs loved it, and I was nervous at first bringing them out. But I look at them, and they're like little kids running around. They have their little cliques. They do their thing. And, if everybody cooperates, people pick up after themselves. As far as someone mentioned the poop. There's dog bags. You clean up. You put it in the trash. It gets thrown out. I mean, it's the same amount of poop, whether they poop there or they poop on the sidewalk and you pick it up. It's poop. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Peters. I live on 55 Hurd Ave in Stratford. Fairly new to Stratford. I've been here about 4 years now. Initially, I was not a fan of the dog park, but I will say on the record, I am officially a fan now of a dog park for Stratford. I will be honest, my fur child, Cooper, was part of the Sunday morning activity within Longbrook. I think officially that's kind of stopped happening now, and so I'm just a fan of a park in general because he genuinely, I think, misses that park. So anything to kind of help him get back out, socialize, and interact, and just get his daily exercise, I think would be a huge benefit. The only one park I just want to kind of just say on the record I'm not a huge fan of. I kind of want to second the gentleman's comments with the Husky that Roosevelt, my wife and I are a little concerned, just we don't know what the bug activity would be and just anything to mitigate the ticks or any kind of other diseases that he may be exposed to. Any other park I'm a fan of, I just wanted to say for the one Roosevelt, that's just my one concern. And then one question, if I'm not able to attend these sessions, where can one get some of the information regarding the measurements? I just want to make sure it is proposed like a large enough park. I didn't know where one could go to learn more about the logistics.
You will probably see that information once we're ready to publish our report before we present it to the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Okay.
So there will, of course, still be time to comment on it, but we will be, when we get it together and ready to present it to our committee above us, it'll be probably published as a PDF because it's probably going to be like 50 pages long, boys and girls. It's going to be a big document, relatively speaking, on the town's website.
Perfect. And I just do appreciate the Twitter and Instagram feeds. I do follow them, so the more you post of information, that's why I came here tonight, because it was posted there. So just want to say thank you.
My name is Beth Matlack. Beth Scholkind. I live at 620 Beaver Dam Road, right behind Roosevelt Forest. I have been a multiple dog owner. We put our last dog down in September, and I walked my dogs through Roosevelt Park all the time. I also have visited any number of dog parks in different towns, different states. And I will say I think it's shameful that Stratford does not have a dog park at this point, that Roosevelt Forest is 240 acres, and we're looking at a dog park that looks like a doggy concentration camp. That's what we're talking about here. I don't understand why we can't use 3 acres of land somewhere in Roosevelt Forest for a decent dog park that has shade, that has trails, that has a little area for people to be, that could be fenced in. And in fact, if you fence in an area in Roosevelt Forest, you will keep the deer out, you will keep the foxes out. The small animals will be less attracted to there if there are dogs in there. So the problem with insects will probably diminish. The other thing that will happen if you keep the deer out of an area in Roosevelt Forest is that the native species of ground cover will come back within that area that the deer will not eat because it is fenced in. So I don't see why there's an issue here in putting a dog park and thinking about more than a doggy concentration camp somewhere in Stratford. Thank you.
Are there any other people? Any other people waiting to speak? All right, thank you very much. At this point, what we're going to do is continue with a response from the subcommittee to some of the statements and questions. We'll start on the outside with our Animal Control Officer, Rachel Solvina.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you for coming out tonight and just let you know that our mission here as a subcommittee is really to research and fact find, to compile a complete report. And part of that process was to have the public forum. And the public forum is important because we are going to include everything that you said tonight, and your voices do matter, and they will be put into our formal report that will be turned over to the Parks and Rec Committee and the Town Council so that they can make an informed decision on their vote. So thank you again for coming out. The only question that I saw asked that I could possibly answer for an animal control standpoint was liability. And in the state of Connecticut, it is considered a civil matter, but anything that your dog does, you are responsible for legally.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is from STARS, president of STARS, and that is Danielle Stella.
Sure. I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and sharing your opinions as we go through this vetting process.
Next speaker, Paula Lockshear, who is the president of the Stratford Dog Park Organization. Again, the non-for-profit group that's trying to raise the money to actually help pay in total for the park, so it's not at any taxpayer cost.
I'd first and foremost, I don't believe they're still here, if I can see, but the Levine family, the comments that you made and the effort to honor your son in this way is so beyond what anyone could ever ask from a private resident that I feel completely strongly that as the Stratford Dog Park Committee, we would support naming the dog park after their son. I think that is beyond. Sincerely can't imagine what that's like for them, but to turn it into something positive for the town is amazing. So really like to thank them. Onto some other things. I really do want to thank everyone who is here. From the start of this process, we've, from the Stratford Dog Park Action Committee's perspective, have felt that the public's input in this project is, if not the most important thing, the second most important thing. We're the people who are going to be using the dog park and living by, near, or within the town that has a dog park. So what we think as a community is really what should determine, in my opinion, where the dog park goes. So thank you all again for coming. And just to answer some of the questions and comments that were made, specifically about the Milford Dog Park and its condition and not being in the best of repair at all times. Something about the Milford Dog Park that I guess people may not be aware of is they do not have a Friends of organization that supports the dog park, which all of the other dog parks in the area do have. And that is something that our committee, if a dog park site is selected in Stratford, has committed to becoming. We would be the Friends of the Stratford Dog Park, and we would support the park through fundraising and through, daily, weekly, monthly cleanup efforts to make sure that it stays beautiful, pristine, and something that Stratford can be proud of. So I want to, assure you that that's something that we're very, very committed to. With some of the other sites, I think as far as, we haven't spoken too much on it, but the site near the animal control facility, we did not support the resolution that came forward for that site, and there were a number of reasons for that above and beyond both the animal control officer and the Stratford Animal Rescue Society's concerns with the site. One of the most important ones, and which is the primary reason listed on our subcommittee's report for not recommending that site, is that the wetlands area that is off of Elm Street is called the Hunter Haven Wetlands, and in the EPA report that was recently published, that has to do a lot right now with all of the sites around the ball field and all of that. If you dig deeper into that report, they break it down into operational units, and that wetlands area is operational unit 8, and they go through a lot of the details, but the section that to me immediately said that site is absolutely not viable for a dog park or any other kind of park in its current condition without remediation. It says the updated evaluation indicates that recreational exposures to sediment and wetland soils in the Ferry Creek area present cancer and non-cancerous risks above acceptable levels. So I can't imagine anybody would want to expose their dog to that, let alone themselves. So that was the reasoning we really had for taking that position, if anybody wanted to know that. And yeah, other than that, I think that's pretty much it, other than just really thank you all. Appreciate it. And if there's anything you can, as they said, we're popular on, social media, so please follow us, keep updated with our progress.
Mr. Bob Jekyll.
Flip the table. Give me more time to write. How long's the tape? I too want to start by thanking everybody to come out. It's very important that as many times as possible that we have a chance as residents of this town to voice our opinions on how we want our town to be run and things we want to have happen in our town and things we want provided for our residents. So I thank everybody for coming out. Next, I'd really like to publicly again acknowledge a few people had pointed out earlier, and I want to make sure that on behalf of this committee that I take time to acknowledge the hard work that Paula Lockshire has done. And I don't know, I've actually known her for several months longer than just this committee, and I can tell you that her tireless efforts to not give up on this dog park when, unfortunately, there were times where she probably felt we were pretty close and it didn't happen. And for someone to continue to believe in a cause that's important to this town takes a lot of effort and a lot of belief in what's right for this town. So I give her a tremendous amount of credit, and I thank you for your continued efforts. The other thing I wanted to provide was a little bit of perspective for some of you guys to what's going to be coming out in the final report. And I do hope that for those of you that are really interested in this, you do take time to read it over. To put it in perspective, the ordinance was passed in April of 2007. Setting aside this current council, because they're still in that term, that was 5 town councils ago. And we are still talking about where are we going to locate a park. And I'm sure if we could go back and rewrite that ordinance, we probably want to fill in that line that said where it was going to go. And I assure you all that the process we have gone through over the last several months to determine what locations in town are viable to locate a dog park, we don't have a particular preference, myself. And do I think there are certain areas that may be better? They may. But I can tell you there are a lot of very viable locations in this town for us to have a dog park, and I honestly believe this town could have a dog park if we wanted a dog park. And as someone said very clearly, and it really, to me, does not get much more complicated than this, it is a fence in a field. And one last thing I did just want to address was, please trust the process when it comes to deciding on where the dog park goes, also the implementation. Please know that we are very, very key to the fact that wherever it goes, if it is decided that we find a location, and I'm an optimist, and I think we're going to find a way to get a dog park placed in this town, please trust the process for implementing it, that we will do everything we can, and I wholeheartedly trust Paula's organization to help us implement a proper dog park in the area that's selected, that it fits as much as we can help it fit in the way it's designed, the fencing that's used, the landscaping that's put around it, and her dedication of her group to help maintain it and make sure that the area it's put in can appreciate it. So one last thing I do want to let everyone know, I do wholeheartedly support the Levine family
wanting to name it in honor of that son. I think it's tremendous. And if as a point of note, I just wonder, someone had brought up the area on Quail Park in the corner and whether or not that is a viable location. That was something that was brought up. However, on the town tax assessor maps, the grounds of Worcester Middle School do extend all the way to Quail. So that is actually school property and was certainly a consideration that we had to be mindful of when we considered the locations. Someone had also brought up Short Beach, whether or not it was on our list still. It is one of the locations, while there are concerns for it. I just wanted to make sure that we did clarify for you. It has not been taken off the list. It is one of the spots. And as far as Great Meadow, I think someone did clarify. Part of that plan, when you see the final report, is to provide some parking, some type of access to it. But thank you again for coming out.
Hi. So yes, thank you all out for coming, and I want to especially thank you people that are here now to take the time to stay, to listen to us speak to you is, I think, as important as engaging in having you speak to us so that we all walk out of here kind of on the same page. Now, I want to speak a little bit to the vetting process because I know there were some questions about how did we come up with this list of 7 and where did it come from. Our process started some 6 months ago when we were charged with trying to fully vet this project out. That was the problem over the years. As Bob mentioned, it's been 10 years since the ordinance was passed. And the issue always was is that an idea or location was thrown out and it would be like a volleyball game. There's an issue with that location and it gets thrown back. And then another name and back. So we tried to go through the list and we went through the history of it, and there have been over 30 locations that were suggested in the town of Stratford. 30. So we took that and we started with what we considered a background vetting system, where we asked questions that we could research on paper, like are there deed or land issues that we were aware of? What's the size of the lot that they were looking at? All the way to, is it a contaminated area? Are there restrictions from things like Homeland Security and other issues? All of which went from the least important to the most important that we considered severe enough that we could eliminate them without even going beyond the paper. Our red line. And from our red line, we were able to wean the list down to these 7 sites within these 5 parks. That's when we started outreach. We reached out to committees. We reached out to commissions. We reached out to departments in the town, all getting the feedback, which of course, one of the most important sets is the feedback that we got from you tonight. The public's opinion is always, always important. Now, to Mr. Chase's question, our plan forward at this point is that we probably will not wean our list any farther than these 7. But what our report will reflect are all of these suggestions and opinions, whether they're from the ACO regarding these locations, whether they're from the different commissions and what they voted on in terms of whether they thought they would be a good host for the park. And of course, a good summary of those that have spoken to us and the letters we received. We feel that with this information, we can return the report to the actual Parks and Recreation Committee, who can then go through this information and make a recommendation now that we've done a good deal of the weaning. But that's the last thing that I really want to kind of mention when it comes to the process. Recommendations. Everything that's going in here is recommendations. There's recommendations for every site. We've heard recommendations against every site. We've heard recommendations from all these various departments, committees, commissions, and groups. And the thing about it is nowhere in the process or nowhere in the ordinance does it say consent. I want to make it clear that no one group, committee, or organization can truly say we veto this and we're not going to let it go past. That's been said at times, and that's simply not true. The only group that has the absolute veto power when it comes to deciding where to or where not put this site is the town council. They are the deciding factor. Everything else is merely a recommendation. Now, the last thing that I want to bring up is the process that we had here tonight and why this decision seems like we're pulling teeth and it's so difficult. Just to give you some quick numbers here, we had 30 speakers here tonight. Of those speakers, there were 15 suggestions or saying, I feel it should go here, and there were 22 suggestions or feelings that said, I don't want it here. Now you'd think, okay, those numbers are pretty close together, but when you take out the fact that there were 7 people who at least gave us an I don't want it here, but I'd like to see it there, what we end up with is almost a 2-to-1 ratio of people who come to the podium tonight and say, yes, we want a dog park, but don't put it here. You're not helping me that much when you don't tell me where, after looking things over, you think it might work, but a lot of people have already, sat there and said, this is where I don't want it. Now, I get that, and I understand that. Everybody feels the impact when something's coming along. And again, I honor and I respect the opinions of each and every one of you, and I understand them, and I record them. But then even we have to try and weigh the good with the bad, the positive with the negative. And so it's a tussle. It really is. But I promise you that we will complete this report on time and give such a full and complete report that a clear decision can be made by our town. Thank you. And we're adjourned.